Sometimes you just have to chuckle at yourself and the things that you do. One of the habits I have during the week is what I call watching game film. Now, if you're unfamiliar with that reference, it's actually a sports reference. Athletes, after they play a game, will go back and watch the film. Y'all remember film. You know, they would watch to see how they did and are there things they can do differently. Well, I actually do that with the sermons, believe it or not. I try to discover if I have any bad habits or there are things I need to change or there are things I need to pay attention to. So this past week when I was watching game film, I had to chuckle because of something I've done the last 2 Sundays. And that is I have made references that some people know absolutely nothing about. And that is, I quoted the lyrics to pop songs from the 1990s. Now, some people don't have any reference for that because you don't listen to popular music. You don't listen to that, and some of you don't have any reference for that because you weren't alive in the 1990s. Well, I just want you to know that today, I'm going for the hat trick. I'm going to quote some more 1990s lyrics, but I'm going to switch it up just a little bit, and it's not going to be pop music, it's going to be country music. Woohoo, yeah. If I know a country music song, it is a rare thing. So here is the answer to the question. The answer is the group named after a state and the song they sang about the pace of our lives. The question is, who is Alabama? And I'm in a hurry, but don't know why. Now, I love that song. I love the harmonies in it, but I have to confess the lyrics hit just a little close to home in my life and some of the things that I do and some of the things that drive me crazy. And if you're unfamiliar with the song, I will tell you that a lot of the song is actually written about how fast this guy can drive in his car. But let me give you just a few of the lyrics because these are the part of it that speak to me about the pace of how we live our lives. Can't be late. I'm always rushing around, shaking hands with the clock. I can't stop because I'm on a roll and I'm ready to rock. I'm in a hurry to get things done. Oh, I rush and rush until life's no fun. All I really got to do is live and die. But I'm in a hurry and don't know why. Oh, I hear a voice telling me I'm falling behind. Better pick up the pace. It's a race, and there's no room for someone in second place. I'm in a hurry to get things done. I rush and rush until life's no fun. All I really got to do is live and die, and I'm in a hurry and don't know why. It's like all I know of country music right there. And a few John Denver songs. But let me ask you, friends, is that the pace of how you live your life? I mean, here's one of the things I think through. Here's scenarios that I frequently run into with families. I want to imagine our children. You know, our children sleep as late as they can. They get up. They have to get ready to go to school. And whenever they're done with school, they have to come home. They have some time in which they're probably supposed to do their homework if they have homework. And then they're changing clothes to get ready. So when mom or dad gets home, mom and dad can take them to dance rehearsal or piano lessons or a team sport practice. And as soon as that practice is over, they come home, they eat, they finish any homework they have, they take a shower, they go to bed, repeat the next day. Or you look at the parents. They have to get up a little earlier so they can get themselves ready, so they can get their kids ready to do all the things we just talked about. And then they leave probably sometimes with a 30-minute commute to get to work. They work all day. They rush home in another 30-minute drive, pick up their children so they can take them to dance or piano or soccer or football or whatever it is. And then after practice, they stop. They get a Happy Meal or a hot and ready pizza because you got to feed the kids and we haven't had time to cook. And after the kids get their meal eaten, we got to make sure they get ready for bed. After the kids go to bed, now we have to do all the things that we as adults have to do. I mean, that kind of pace. makes you look forward to retirement. And yet, those of you that are retired, how many times have you probably said, I don't know how I had time for everything before. How did I have a job? I can barely get everything done that I need to get done today. Is this your life? This making sense of how busy we are? Because I think that we live this frenetic, dizzying pace of our lives. And if that is really how we live our lives, it should not be a surprise to us when a couple has trouble. That they've invested so much time in getting everything done, doing everything as a family, that they haven't made time for each other. Mom and Dad, you need to know, if you don't have time for each other, there is no all of us, there is no us. You got to take time to date and be together so you can be there as a family. How often do we find ourselves in that place where we think, I have no energy, I'm overweight, I don't feel good, my health is not good, and it's because I'm eating Happy Meals and hot and ready pizza or whatever fast food I can get. And the reality is, when we have poor diet and we don't get enough rest and we don't get the exercise we need, that it's no wonder in America so many people have diabetes. We're suffering from heart disease. And in this sacred place, surely we must confess that if something has to give, if there's something we just don't have time for, so often it is our focus on spiritual matters that we push aside. That we have all these tasks to do, so we don't take time to pray. We don't take time to read Scripture. We don't take time to have time one-on-one with God during the day. Beloved, we find ourselves wishing that there was a magic pill that we could take that would help us lose weight and be physically fit without discipline, sacrifice, good, healthy eating habits. We tell everybody we just need more time in the day, and our theology gets reduced to something that will fit on a bumper sticker, and it's not adequate enough to keep us strong in our faith, and then when life gets hard, we wonder why our faith seems to fail us. Is this how God intended for it to be? I don't think so. Let me read why. So the creation of the heavens and earth and everything in them was completed. On the seventh day, God had finished his work of creation, so he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because it was the day when he rested from all his work of creation. This is the account of the creation of the heavens and the earth. This is also the word of the Lord. I want you to know that to preach this sermon today, I am having to deal with a major superstition that I have come to have. And the superstition is this: anytime I have preached, anytime I have taught, anytime I have counseled people about needing a Sabbath, I don't get a day off for about 3 weeks. And so I am reluctant to do this, because I do believe that we need time to refresh. I do believe that God gives us something, and so I don't want to have to struggle through not getting a day off for a while. And trust me, you don't want me to be that bear that doesn't get that day off every now and then. But when we live at a frenetic pace and we wonder if this is how life is supposed to be, the answer to that is no. That's not how God intended for it to be. And we pick this up from reading the story of creation, that on the seventh day, God rested from all his work of creation. And because God rested, there's some things about Sabbath that I think we need to know. The first thing I would say is that Sabbath rest is holy. Last week we looked at the creation story of day 6 and how on day 6 God said human beings are created to be like God. And so if God rested on a Sabbath and called it holy, then we ought to realize that Sabbath rest is really a holy thing. This is something that God has given us. This is something that is important, is that we take this time to rest from our work, from our responsibilities. Now, trust me, that doesn't mean you get an exemption to those things, because when we read through the Old Testament, what we see was get all your work done so that you can rest on day 7. But day 7 is to be a holy day. And the significance and importance of this has actually been recognized by people outside the community of faith. Primarily, I'm referring to an 18th century French writer, philosopher, and critic of Christianity, a guy named Marie-Francois Arouet. You may not recognize that name, but perhaps you recognize that he was called Voltaire. And Voltaire was somebody that was against the Christian church. Now, he actually died in 1778, 2 years after the writing of the Declaration of Independence, and for those of you that keep score of such things, 6 years before the formation of the Methodist Episcopal Church in the newly formed United States of America. And Voltaire said that within 100 years of his life, so from 1778 to 1878, he said within 100 years of his life that Christianity would be history, that the church would cease to exist. Now, obviously, our presence here this morning is pretty good evidence that Voltaire was wrong. However, he did offer a caveat. He wrote, if we have any hope to destroy Christianity, then we must make sure that Christians do not observe Sabbath, that they must not acknowledge it nor keep it a sacred day. Now, beloved, if someone outside the church can look at the practice we have of Sabbath and what it is that we do and how it is we rest, and they can see that as a critical part of who we are, if we understand that there are people outside the church that really wish the church didn't exist, but they can say, if you want to kill the church, get Christians to be so busy they don't have time for Sabbath, then that will bring about an end to the church. This ought to be the ringing bell that captures our attention, that Sabbath rest is holy. We're created to be like God. God is holy. God rested. Sabbath rest is a holy thing for us to observe. But we may ask the question, because we're so used to living at this frantic pace, but what are you supposed to do on Sabbath? To that end, I would reply that Sabbath rest is a time for worship. That's why we're here. We set aside this time on Sunday morning so that we can worship. People set aside time to be online Sunday morning so that we can worship. And I would even add to you that we are not a church that's just on site and online. We are a church that is also on demand. Now, the reason I say that is because while we might preach and teach Sabbath, the reality is we're glad some people are working right now. You know, police, fire, emergency personnel, medical personnel, just in case. We want them out there. We want them working. There's a good chance that some of you today might want to eat in a restaurant, and you're glad people are there to work. And I hope, I pray, I believe that you're really glad that the pastors and church staff work on Sunday. I appreciate this calm amen. The rest of y'all could learn from that. But we're glad people work on Sunday, and when people work on Sunday, then there has to be another time to have Sabbath. If Sunday morning is the available time that we schedule, then how do people that work actually find time? It's on demand. We record our live stream so that people that can't be here on Sunday morning, can't watch the live stream, actually can worship some other time. Because you know this is, I'm almost embarrassed to say this. Somebody told me recently, they said, D.A., sometimes when you're preaching, we're just thinking, would you please get on with it? We already know this. But then they stopped and they thought, but that's when we remember, not everybody knows. What I'm about to say is so simple. I hope everybody in here already knows it, but I'm not going to assume everybody in here already does. And that is this. I think the Bible is a holy book. I've read it cover to cover more than once. I have never read anywhere in here where it says Sabbath must be on Sunday. That may be a shock to some people. I hope not. But it doesn't say in here that Sabbath must be on Sunday. It says God rested on the seventh day. It says in the 10, the top 10, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. It is our day of worship. But it never says Sabbath has to be on Sunday. In fact, historically, when all this stuff was written, Sabbath wasn't Sunday. It was the seventh day on the Jewish calendar. Now, the Jewish calendar is different from our calendar. When we consider a day, it goes from midnight to midnight. That's a day. That's not how the Jewish calendar sees it. In the Jewish calendar, a day is from sundown to sundown. So, for example, several years ago, I was in Bethlehem. Our flight back to the United States actually left on the seventh day. It left on Friday night. And when we were driving through Bethlehem, driving through Jerusalem, it was pretty quiet compared to how we had experienced those cities the rest of the time, because it was Sabbath. And what the Jews would do on Sabbath is they would gather in their home, and this was a time to focus on faith. This was a time of worship. They would remember the ancient scriptures that they had. They would pray prayers. They would recite liturgies of the faith. It was a time for the family to worship together. And this is what they would do. When we look at the crucifixion of Jesus, we believe Jesus was crucified on a Friday. And if you remember the scripture, they had to hurry to get him off the cross and bury him before the start of Sabbath, before sundown. And so day one is Friday, Sabbath is day 2. The third day, the first day of the Jewish week, Jesus rises from the dead. And so that's why we worship on Sunday instead of Saturday, as the Jewish Sabbath would be, because this is a day that Jesus rose from the dead. This is a day of our new life. This is a day of our transformation. This is a day that we set aside to be sacred for worship. And so we are glad that people are working today, but we understand that Sabbath does not have to be for Sunday. In fact, years ago when I was living in Ada, and a lot of churches were considering contemporary worship because they really saw that as the key to how churches attracted young people. Now, keep in mind, this is when St. Andrews was starting during this era. And people would ask me, what can we do to attract young people? That's because I was a campus minister. I was supposed to be the shell answer man for all things young adult related. They said, we want to start a contemporary service. We were thinking if we started at 8:30 on Sunday morning and then have our other service, at 11 o'clock or whenever, that would be a good time. What do you think? I said, I think that's a terrible idea. And they said, why? I said, because the people you want to attract have kids and they can't get around that early most Sundays. In fact, the people you really want to reach, the people that are unchurched, the people that you are glad work at restaurants on Sunday so you can go out to eat after church, those are the people you're trying to attract. They have to work the weekends. That's when they make their money. If you want to attract them, have a Monday service, because that's the day they take off. That's the day they rest. That's the day they refresh. The question for us becomes, when is our Sabbath of worship? Reality is we ought to be worshiping every day. But we gather together as worship. When is the time that we set apart from all the other days to focus on the things of God, to renew our spirits, to somehow not have to tend to the responsibilities that we normally have to deal with? And I can hear somebody thinking, D.A., you don't get it, man. That doesn't work in my life. When you were talking about how busy things were, that accurately describes my life. I have too much to accomplish. I do not have enough time. How could I possibly have time for worship? Sabbath rest is holy. Sabbath rest is a time of worship. But now what I want to do is I want to refer back to this creation narrative. And I'm going to read you part of it, and then I'm going to make a little comment, and then I'm going to make a little more of a comment, if that's all right. Okay, Greg, if you'd put that slide up there, please. This is a scripture. God finished the work of creation, and I would say, but not in creation. God rested from creation, but not from creating. Now, let me explain that for us. All through this series, when we've talked about how God is over creation, God separated the levels of water, He created the sky, and we believe that God was out there above everything, that God was sovereign. And we said, yes, but let's never just speak of how God is far removed from everything. Let's talk about how God is close. We believe God is both far away and close at the same time. So God is finished with the work of creation, but God is still involved in what God has created. And then when we look at the second part, that God rested from creation, but not from creating, we believe because that the creative part of God's nature is who created everything. We don't think God quit that after day 6. In fact, I don't think, I don't think that you could go to God on the 7th day and say, hey, God, I want to talk to you. And God says, whoa, it's my day off. I don't think God does that. I don't think God would say to us, no, don't pray to me on this day because I am unavailable. No, brothers and sisters, God gives us the Sabbath as a gift. A gift of something that is holy, a gift of something that is worship, a gift that we connect our lives with God in a way that we may not be able to the rest of the week because we're, keeping this dizzying pace that we so often live by. And I don't want anyone to think, okay, DA, we get it. We got to take a Sabbath. One more thing I have to add to my calendar. Come on, friends. We ought to understand this by now. We are not created for Sabbath. Sabbath is created for us, that we might rest, that we might focus on the holy thing. So what we believe about God and our experience with God is not something that is just reduced to a bumper sticker phrase, and then we wonder why our faith may not be sufficient sometimes. God created this holy day so that we might be in God's presence and be holy like God is. I know it sometimes means we have a shifting of priorities for how we live. I remember when I was in seminary, we always had seminary professors that would preach Sabbath to us. You shouldn't study on Sunday. You shouldn't study on Sunday. Sunday's the day of worship. To which we always said, then why do you give us tests on Monday? And they would always say, well, you should study a lot on Saturday. Either that or we have to adopt the Sabbath of the Jewish tradition and we don't study till after sundown. One or the other of those. But the Sabbath day of rest, the Sabbath of creation, that when God could have just ended it at day 6, and this was the end of all that God had created for the heavens and earth. But no, God is still concerned about those things that God has created. God is concerned about us. And if He could rest, surely we can find rest. Because another thing we learn in reading this book is we are not God. In fact, I would say that Sabbath today is for ordering our life and honoring the larger purpose, the larger creative purpose of God. In other words, Sabbath can be that day when we stop and we say, what do I need to do to get my life in order? What do I need to do so that I can experience this connection with God? And I love how a popular pastor had preached about it recently. His name's Louis Giglio. And he wrote this. He said, we should not think of Sabbath as a day off. We should think of Sabbath as a day up. He goes on to write that without Sabbath, we forget who we are and we lose sight of why God is. that when there is no Sabbath in our lives, we become intoxicated by the lie that the sum of our lives depends on us instead of on God. In other words, when we carry the burden of having all this stuff to do and not having time to rest, then we're saying, it all depends on me, instead of learning to depend upon God. I think we sang that a while ago, didn't we? Only trust him, only trust him, only trust him now. He will save you. Friends, I encourage you that on day 7, God rested and he called it holy. And he offered this to creation and said, this is my gift to you. Let's receive that gift. Take rest from our labors. Take rest from our responsibilities and live a life that's not in a hurry, and we know why. Would y'all pray with me?